I think everybody's wired with the Spirit. Everybody's wired with their faith, whatever they choose that faith to be. So I'm not sure we developed much of anything as much as we said it's okay. It's okay to be who you. It's okay to live your faith. It's okay to be responsible. I think with that then comes the responsibility of being respectful of the differences of faith. And when I think about our chaplaincy program, and I go down and we've got over 100 chaplains today, I think somewhere north of 120, and I see there's 20 plus variations of Baptist chaplains in our company. I say, well, I knew there was a First Baptist, and I knew there was maybe a South Street Baptist, but I didn't know that you could have that many nuances of that, and some of the other nuances, and so with the Muslim faiths that are in, and the Buddhist faiths that are in, and the Jewish faiths that's around, we have all of the different ones, and then we have some atheists around. But how do you take what people are, whatever they choose to be, and then say it's okay? And in the okay, maybe you create the opportunity that people will have a dialogue about it instead of keeping it in the back room. So say it's out there on the table. And we can talk with each other, and we can acknowledge what we agree on, and we can acknowledge what we disagree on, and the conversation's healthier, and the conversation's more open. And so I'm not sure we really developed anything as much as we said it's just okay. And sometimes the biggest challenge, and I have the same challenge with my teenage children, is just give them the permission to go. Because it's easy to say no. It's hard to say yes. But the chaplaincy program was here. We had it, and we bought a company called Hudson Foods. And when we bought Hudson Foods, there were some decisions made at that time and they only had 5 chaplains. And so at that time, the decision was made to take it out. And as I got more of my responsibilities, and it came in my leadership roles, I knew that my faith was more than important to me. And I spent a lot of time thinking about what is it we can do? What is it we can do to help our folks? And because unfortunately, I think to a degree what's happened to the HR departments in most organizations is that they're responsible for making sure the paperwork's done, making sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So they don't have time to maybe say, I need to listen for 15 minutes. They just can't sit there. So I got to talking around and trying to understand the chaplaincy program that the group that Red Hudson and his company had. As I came to understand it, and with what was going on in my life and what I was understanding and reading out there, and this ideal of letting people be who they are and let them be whole people in the organization. And then I said to myself, well, really, within Tyson Foods, we have 120,000 folks that are available if we create a chaplaincy program that allows people to have a place to go to for resources. And I would say what's really evolved out of our chaplaincy program is that they're kind of a first interceptor. Somebody will come talk to the chaplain and say, you know, my son's got an alcohol problem. Do you have any advice? And they may say, well, there's a service down at the local community center that is a place for you to go talk about it. Or they might come and say, you know, maybe my teenage daughter's pregnant. Do you have any advice? So they kind of intersect right there at some of life's struggles. Or, you know, my husband and we're not getting along very well. Pastor, is there something we can do? And that is where the chaplaincy program has made a difference and makes a difference in people's lives. Or, you know, the manager of the plant might go up to the chaplain and say, look, Mary out there on line 2, I understand through the community and I understand through some of my sources, things aren't going very well. Why don't you just go over and say, hey, Mary, how are you doing? Is there anything you need to talk about? Mary may say, no, you know, and move on. Or Mary says, yeah, well, yeah, maybe at my break, I'd like 5 minutes to visit with you about it. So it creates an opportunity for people to go in confidence, to talk about life's struggles. And one of the things that I find interesting when I ask chaplains why they do it, and why, because it's a part-time job, it's a volunteer job, and they work 15 to 20 hours a week, and there's compensation for it. most of them will say it gets me back to why I really got into the ministry, is to help people at the basic level of life. And that's what energizes a lot of the chaplains, because it takes them out of the daily church where they're worrying about, does the budget met? Are the parishioners happy? Are the electrical bills being paid? And it gets back to why they really came into the ministry, is that front line interaction. And when you talk to the different faith groups we have in the organization, it almost always seems to come back to that first line of help and the communication. You ask about the question about, a programmer developed a program, and I talked about permission. We worked very hard to make sure this chaplaincy program belongs to the company. Some people might say, well, yeah, you're John Tyson and you kind of suggested, therefore it's mandated. But when we first started, we only had like 4 or 5 chaplains, and it just kind of laid there. And by word of mouth, people talking back, and because each one of our plant managers basically runs a small business. They might manage 1,000 people, and the sales out of that plant could be $100 to $200 million. So if you think about it, we have a series of small towns, a series of small businesses. And so our chaplaincy program just started out and was just there as a way for people to build upon it. And otherwise, it might become what's known in corporate speak as an affinity program or some other type of program. And we've purposely made sure that our faith-based program is part of our core values and is part of our culture. It's just not something you go in and you pick up off the shelf. It's who we are. It's ingrained in who we are, and it's not a program. It is part of our DNA. And I think it's reflective on the organization that when the company was having difficulties 12, 18 months ago and the markets were disrupted and we were looking at all situations, that the management team that was managing the company, because everything was on the table, they chose not to implement a cut into that area. They recognized and they chose to acknowledge that is really the DNA of our core values and the DNA of our cultures. And so I think that speaks to what we're trying to do.